In this session, we're going to talk about how to use technology more effectively. So once you've determined that you want to use technology for a lesson, that it's going to benefit the lesson, the next thing is thinking about how technology can truly transform your lesson. So we're going to talk about the SAMR model today. So basically, SAMR looks at how technology can take a lesson and completely revamp it. So there's two different kind of layers of SAMR. You have enhancement and you have transformation. And within those, you have 4 different levels. So you can enhance a lesson with substitution. So substitution is where you basically use technology to substitute, but there's not really an improvement to the lesson, right? Certainly it could be an improvement, it makes your life a little bit easier, makes it easier for students, but the learning isn't directly impacted by technology. So this would be like, instead of calling a parent, you email them. There's not a huge difference. Augmentation is where you have an improvement using that technology. So now the learning is going to actually reach a new level. And then in the transformation phase, you have modification and redefinition. So modification, you're going to have significant redesign. The learning is going to look very different than the original lesson. And then redefinition is really where it's like something completely inconceivable to before. So again, you're kind of starting by standing on the side of the lake and wondering what's at the bottom. Redefinition, you're in a submarine actually looking at the bottom. So it's kind of showing you how technology can take you to a different level of learning. So here are some examples along with definitions that I find really helpful. So enhancement here, substitution, you're just using Google Earth instead of an atlas, right? So you're trying to find, a place on the map, bam, you found it using Google Earth. For augmentation, you're actually going to measure the distance. You're going to, actually start to plan a trip perhaps. Modification, you're going to put layers on top of that map to actually start researching the place. So you're looking at, okay, like what's the culture, what's the food like, what's the flag of that country, those types of things start layering on top of the map. And then redefinition, their students are going to actually create a tour of the location, right? So you're going to have this 3D tour of the place you're looking at. So you've started by just saying, oh, let's look at this place on a map. With redefinition, the lesson is completely different. Another way or another example of SAMR is thinking about your coffee in the morning. So if you typically make your coffee at home, right, SAMR is when you're going to stop at the coffee shop instead. Sadly, no Starbucks here, but that's okay. So substitution is just when the coffee shop coffee is substituted for your home coffee, right? It's the same coffee, it's black, not much change. Augmentation is a latte, right? So now it's a little bit different. You're using a different technology and it's going to taste different than your traditional coffee at home. Modification is that caramel macchiato, right? Where you're going to redesign your coffee. It's going to taste and look and smell completely different than your original at-home coffee. And then redefinition, right? That pumpkin spice latte, where it's going to be completely changed from your original at-home coffee. And what you can do is kind of set goals for technology using the SAMR method. So substitution is a great use of technology sometimes, but what you want to do is if you're truly using technology to enhance the lesson, try to get to modification or redefinition, right? So think about your use of technology. Are you just using it to substitute? And that's fine sometimes, or do you really actually want to use the technology to revamp learning? And remember to make it doable, right? You shouldn't be using technology every day just for the sake of technology, but when you do use technology, you're not always going to be redefining the lesson, right? But on occasion, when you want to really use technology to its fullest power, then try to get to redefinition on occasion. And then don't forget about TPAC. If you haven't gotten to that QR code yet, you will. But remember, technology is not always appropriate. So make sure you're not just using it for the sake of saying, yeah, I've got the tea in steam today. But what you'll see is as you start using technology more often, you'll find yourself gravitating more to the transformation side of things. So most people kind of start out over in the enhancement, and that's okay. But eventually you'll be able to hopefully use technology to completely change what learning looks like in your classroom. So here's a quick example. So Mrs. Young's a middle school math teacher. She kind of follows that traditional old school math structure, right? She's going to answer questions, from last night's homework. She's going to do a lesson on the board. Students are going to write down examples. She's going to answer any questions they have and then give them a worksheet from their workbook to do for homework. That's kind of her standard day. So substitution, rather than printing out the worksheets or the workbook, she's going to have them do it on their iPad or on their Chromebook, right? So she's just substituting. Again, there's no functional change to the learning. Certainly it's going to be easier for the students. They don't have to lug around extra papers and things. Certainly better for the environment. But in terms of the learning, it's going to look the same. So that would be substitution. Augmentation, maybe they're actually just going to submit their assignments via their LMS, right? Whether it's Schoology or Canvas or Google Classroom, but they'll submit to their LMS. And then what Mrs. Young's going to do is before class, she's going to use that data to group her students. That way, when they come in, students who already understood the topic can go off and do an extension. Students who are struggling can meet with her to do a small group. So now we're going to show some functional improvement with the lesson. Modification, so maybe her students are going to actually get on the Explain Everything app as a group, and they're going to work through some sample problems. So they're going to have to use their voices, use their written math examples using the Explain Everything app, and they're actually going to explain how to solve the problem. So not only are they practicing the problems, but they have to explain it, which of course is going to help them understand it better. Once they're comfortable in a small group, then she'll pull them out to individually work. And so what she's going to do is have a few example problems on Flipgrid, and the students actually have to record themselves explaining whether or not the example was done right or wrong. Okay, so they're actually going to have to evaluate work to say, yes, that follows the rules of this math concept, or no, here's where they dropped a negative or something like that. And then redefinition. So she's going to use technology to actually have students work together and pretend that they are starting a business, right? So they're going to use those math concepts in a business setting. So they're going to pitch a video explaining their business model, why it's going to work, why their business is going to be successful using those math concepts to potential investors. So now she's completely redefining the math lesson. It's something that's applicable. It's something that's more than just do these worksheet problems. Instead, they're using the math in an applied sense, and they're using that technology to be able to share it beyond their classroom. So that's just a quick example. Of course, SAMR is going to look different in every classroom because of context, but it's just a way to, again, use technology to revamp the learning. So your password for this one is going to be pumpkin spice. Go ahead and fill that in and move on to your next QR code. Thanks, guys.